Welcome to Blueprints for Liberty, Designing the Freedom Cities of Tomorrow. This is a podcast that explores the visionary concept of freedom cities and how we can create living environments that prioritize individual liberty, social harmony, and equal opportunities for all. We look back through history to see how the past informs the future and how people can self-organize in their communities to support self-sufficiency. We also look to develop leaders that are moral and ethical in a world that is spinning out of control. Tune in to be part of the conversation shaping the future of our communities. Hello and welcome. Today we have with us Richard Bracewell from Off-Label.
Off-label podcast, yes.
Yep, Off-Label Podcast. I got it right. I was like, for some reason I had stuck in my head We the People podcast, but I think that's from when
Oh,
I was
that's
traveling a bit ago.
that was Voice of the People, and yeah, that's the little chat profile I have.
Oh, okay. All right, that's probably why. So anyway, I'll let Richard introduce himself and then we'll just get into a conversation about leadership, especially as it relates to politics, which I'm sure will be rather interesting.
All right. Well, my name is Richard Bracewell. I'm one of two hosts of the Off-Label podcast that is actually starting to gain a little bit of traction. We're not family friendly. We just talk about the news. We go through things, and we just say how we feel, and just really speak from the heart kind of situation. We play as nice as we can with the YouTube, but yeah, it's we just nothing about our show is scripted in any way. The only thing that's scripted about it is the stories that we bring up. Before we even start the show, we'll be like, hey, we got this story, we got this story. What do you want to use? What do you want to cut? Things like that. After that, you know, even when we have a guest or something like that, we may sit here and be like, okay, so have you heard of this story? I'd like to talk about that. No. Okay, so the gist of the story is this. You want to talk? Yes. Okay, cool. We'll add it in, you know, and then everything you hear from that point once we start the show is organic as far as that goes. So, me and Davey we skirt the lines a lot. We're not family friendly, but we have a lot of fun while doing it. If you ever see me talking in somebody's live chat or something like that, and it's voice of the people, that's me as well. But yeah,
All right. Well, thank you. Um, Let me start because you know me. Well, you don't know me personally, but my audience knows me. I'm a history person. And so I'll go
okay,
back briefly. I mean, we're not going too far back in history here, just, 30, 40 years, something like that. And I'll share a little bit about my perspective on leadership from a political perspective. I've said many times on the show, I was born a political junkie. I don't know why. When I was 10 years old, I was so disappointed that I couldn't go vote for Richard Nixon. Why I wanted to vote for Richard Nixon, I have no idea. I was 10 and my parents weren't political. This is the really odd part. Nobody in my family was political. How I ever heard of him, maybe in passing at school, I don't know. But I was real excited and McGovern was like, no, 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 we don't want him. This is not good. And then after Watergate and all of that nice mess, I still held to my belief that Richard Nixon was not the person he was portrayed to be. And where I got this information, I have no idea because I'm a teenager and I still have no idea. But now, just in the last probably 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of information that comes out that really goes counter to the narrative. But I believed he was a good leader, primarily because of, and I know today we're very anti-China. But at the time, we were trying to, build some kind of relationships with China. So I have kind of mixed feelings about what he did there now. But for years, I was like, hey, this is a good guy. He's trying to, you know, put us on the world stage in a better place. And then Jimmy
right.
Carter, bless his heart, he the nicest guy you could ever have. It's hard to say anything bad about him, except he was not a leader. He absolutely 100% was not a leader.
Yeah.
And this was the time when the attitude toward America was really going downhill. And by this point in my life, I had come back east. I was living in, was born and raised in Wyoming, and I had come back east with my family and had gone on all these historical tours. And if I wasn't a political junkie before then, I certainly was after that. And I heard all these wonderful stories about our founding fathers and how great and wonderful they were and what tremendous leaders they were. And I could spend hours, which we won't do, going into our founding fathers. And yes, I know they weren't perfect, but they were
Oh,
tremendous leaders. The amount of moral courage that they exhibited in order to accomplish what they did to me is just unparalleled in almost any, you know, period of time. Um,
definitely.
then, but, and so I was really disappointed when Jimmy Carter, I think this was my biggest disappointment besides all the economic chaos, was that the whole world just seemed to be hate America, hate America, hate America. And I was like, I don't hate America. What is wrong? I don't hate America. And I know everybody says, you're usually liberal when you're young and conservative when you get old. I've been conservative my whole life. Don't know why. But, and I was so excited, super, super excited because I was turning 18 in July of 1980. So I was living in California by this point,
I
and
wasn't even born yet.
you what? I know, I
I
know,
wasn't even born. I was born in 85.
I know. So I mean, I told you I'm right on the cusp of being a baby boomer. So this might, I don't know if this, anyway, I was so excited that I could go vote for Ronald Reagan. I mean, I was like so over the top, like
Right.
my dream come true. And I think it just mostly because, he, yes, he was, able to fix a lot of things economically that was really a mess in the 70s. But because he was so like morning in America, we love our country. He was bringing back that patriotism that just was so important to me. And the ironic part about it was because I was living in California and I couldn't vote till after I got off work, I knew that he had won by the time I went to vote because the rest of the country had voted and he swept every state except one. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so I was like, but no, I am going to go put my check mark next to his name. I am going to do that. And so I
Right.
did. And, I've learned a lot about Ronald Reagan since that time, and I still have tremendous respect for him as a leader. And to me, as we talk about leadership, this was the thing that I liked about Nixon. This is the thing I didn't necessarily like about Carter, is the thing I liked about Ronald Reagan, and then we'll get into, more modern politicians, was to me, that's what a leader is. They inspire hope. They inspire, they're not perfect. They don't do everything right. If you're in leadership, you're going to make a ton of mistakes. That just is par for the course. But I believe we're in it for the right reasons and we're really trying to bring about good which to me, one of the things that I think we should be is very patriotic. Um,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel like Jimmy Carter was patriotic, He was a very good, I mean, but probably the best Sunday school teacher you could ever have. But nonetheless, I didn't feel like he was a leader in that aspect. And
He was like
so
that Biden of their Bidens, that generation's Biden. Yeah.
well, no, I know too much about Biden. I wouldn't say Jimmy Carter was corrupt. He was a Sunday school teacher, and I think he lived true to his Christian values. Biden is a whole different story. Yeah, I'm sorry. We won't
Oh,
even go.
that's even worse. Yeah, I will admit that one. But I don't know. It's always like I look back at everything, especially in those kinds of eras where we really didn't have a flow of information that we have now.
Yep.
Like whatever was in your area was the information you got. It was easier to control.
Yes.
How much of that was real propaganda to us, though? Because if you actually look back through history, you can find a lot of things, a lot of sleazy, a lot of scandalous things now that you did back then, you know? And it kind of worries me with it.
Yes, like I said, I still have a tremendous amount of respect for Ronald Reagan, but I've learned a lot about his presidency, and there were some things. I mean, I did live through the Oliver North and the Iran-Contra affair and all that kind of stuff. So I know that, like I said,
Right.
nothing, no one's ever perfect, and
No.
Watergate, Nixon, but to me, there's always more to the story, and that's the good thing about living nowadays is we can find out more to the story. But Joe Biden has
Mhm.
been in politics forever. He has never been a good guy. It's not just this corrupt presidency. The guy, he's just not a good guy. I mean, from a moral perspective, and I've never seen him as a leader.
No,
Why he keeps
I mean,
kept
Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
He said he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle. I don't want to take any direction from a man like that.
I
And then
know.
y'all are going to sit there and say that Donald Trump is racist. This dude did the eulogy for the KKK.
I know. Oh, and that's the least of his sins, believe me. I mean, seriously, this guy, yeah, why he kept getting elected in Delaware is beyond me. And I know why he thrived in the swamp because he's a swamp creature. Always has been, always will be. He was for the criminal, you know, bill back in the 90s before he was against, all this stuff. He's just the biggest flip-flopper I've ever seen. And
Yeah.
yeah, so, but like I said, I say this with a whole lot of trepidation is because I don't like Bill Clinton. I don't think he was a moral character, but I do think he was a leader. Now, he may be leading me a place I didn't want to go, but
I will, I'll give you that.
yeah, in terms of
I'll give you
leadership
that.
qualities, yeah, I got to give him some credit there. Um,
There was definitely a lot of charisma to him, and it helped to get a lot of things done that were actually really good. You know, coming off of Reagan with the economic little standpoint that we had. Yeah, that was actually started under Reagan. It started to turn around at the last of Reagan's presidencies, and Clinton just kind of rode that and built on it. I mean, like we were saying before, you know, you hit the record button that we were talking about how I sent you that document there from the United Nations about how they judged our economy to continue to flow in that direction, you know. And I guess once you look at it, you're going to be like, I get it now.
yeah,
I understand. But yeah, it's as far as that goes, it's I don't know though. That Clinton was about the time when I started to really pay attention because we all know the trope with Clinton. All right.
yeah,
But yeah, it was all I saw from him was exactly what I see from Trump. You know, at that point in time, it was charisma in front of the camera. Everybody loves the jokes and everything that happens. The performative art of it gets the deal done. It really does.
yes.
And that's what I see. I saw a lot of that in Clinton, and I was like, okay, this dude is horrible. He's really dirty, but you're getting things done. Cool. I mean,
And he was getting things done, like if I look back and I say, and I mean, to me, I had a really hard time separating Hillary Clinton from Bill Clinton because Hillary Clinton is, in my opinion, evil incarnate.
oh
I knew
Jesus.
that right from the start. I don't know why. I just picked up on that. Um, but he did do work requirements for welfare. He did do a lot of things economically that, I mean, he did benefit a lot from the whole dot-com boom and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
But, you know, to benefit from that, you have to there are things that happen in the halls of Congress that facilitate that. And I'll give him that credit, but
yeah.
morally, no, sorry, no. But to be fair, I have a hard time finding anybody in Washington to be morally upright and so I have
I
to
don't know.
I have to temper
I
my um qualifications based on
I, I will say there are a few that I can name, specifically the Republican Party, because that's about it. I mean, you got Harriet Hageman. She took over Liz Cheney's
yeah.
seat.
Yep.
That woman's been knocking it out the park. I'm
Hey,
sorry.
I'm from
She
Wyoming.
don't she don't stand for nothing. She's just there, and you know, I've helped out her staffers along the way with some of the voting things that happened. There was a committee hearing. I think it was back September 10th of last year. Um, yeah, that all that information was brought up by me and my group, you know, behind the scenes.
Oh,
Um, there's of course, Anna Paulina Luna. I got to give it to that woman. She is, everybody wants to be, oh, well, you're trying to proxy vote. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit there and tell a woman that just because she exercises her right to have a kid, she can't participate
yeah.
in representing me.
Hmm.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Now, with that bill as included, I will say this: if you change the wording to the serious medical condition to life threatening, I'd be on board. You
Yeah.
know, drop it down from 12 weeks to 9 weeks. I'd be on board. Okay. Yeah, I get it. You just had a child and everything, but we still need you back out there. All right. You're supposed to be the best of the best. You're supposed to be held to a higher standard than us, which bothers me because nobody ever really is.
No.
But, she goes out there and they want to fight about this bill. And I'm just like, y'all stopped her from voting because she had a kid for 2 months. And then she started bringing her baby in because she wanted to represent the people of her area like she was elected to do.
Hmm.
She wasn't trying to go in there looking for favors and to skirt everything. But just because there are some people that would, everybody's screaming and crying about how this is a bad thing. I don't see it as a bad thing. Like I said, change it to life threatening, shorten the time frame. You got me on board, you know, because a serious medical condition could be like Jerry O'Connell, or what is it? Jerry Conley has
Yeah.
the throat
Virginia.
cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the throat cancer. Okay, that's a serious medical condition, but it's not life threatening at this point. You
Right.
know, that is serious, and that would be abused. I get you. The wording of it is important, but she's out there. I listen to her in committee hearings. I listen to what she's saying. I look at the way she actually votes, and she votes the way the Republican Party, or not, I won't even say the Republican Party, the way the people themselves, because there's a lot of people who've turned away from this
Hmm.
weird stuff that's been going on. The way the people themselves are actually talking and saying, and I gotta hand it to her. Just like Nancy Mace. And I will say this: Marjorie Taylor Greene does the same thing. However, all of those are women.
Hmm.
The males in the Republican Party have no balls.
Yeah.
And that's what worries me. I can name strong women on the right, but what do you have? You got Jim Jordan, James Comer. Oh, wait, didn't they tell Hunter Biden all that walking away from Congress twice? That'll
Hmm.
go away. That'll go away when you sit down and talk to me.
Yeah.
We'll take it all away. You won't have to go to jail for contempt of Congress if you come in and talk to me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you got Steve Bannon who went to jail for the same thing.
And Peter Navarro.
Right. You
Yeah.
let that happen. That happened, but you got Hunter Biden and all the Burisma scandal and everything like that. And yes, they were selling influence. There's no way you can sit there and tell me that he had a Chinese company working in Ukraine, getting paid by Ukraine, and there's no kickback along the way. Oh, that $200,000 check? No, that's just paying back a loan, right? Because it said loan repayment. Okay, so if I contract somebody to take somebody out and I put on that memo in that check, loan repayment, I didn't commit a crime. Are you trying to tell me that?
I know. That's and I agree with it's interesting that you brought up the females. And I agree with you. And I mean, I was a Jim Jordan and a James Comer fan for a long time, but everything was just all talk and no, they didn't produce
Strongly
anything.
worded letters.
Yeah, strongly worded letters. And that's not leadership to me. That's not, leaders take risks. Leaders go out there and challenge the status quo. Leaders are willing to stand up for what's right. I mean, like I
Mhm.
said, I have to temper my requirements when it comes to politics, but still, I get frustrated. And another disappointment has been Mike Johnson, which, to be fair,
Yes.
my husband's name's Mike Johnson, so I have to separate the two. He's not the same. And I was so excited when he first got in. I was like, okay, here's somebody that I've watched and followed for quite some time, and he seems to have all that I'm looking for. And from day one, it didn't even take him a week to get corrupted by the system. I was
Yeah, he
like,
was all I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this. They took him in the back room and we're like, hey, good, send the money to Ukraine and Al Green, come get
Yeah,
censured. Oh,
yeah,
I'm just gonna sing, man, we're adjourned. Fuck. You know what?
I know.
Man, no, I knew it was gonna be something because I haven't been in this in a long time, for a long time, really. I've kind of, like I was saying, I dabbled in politics with my dad and everything like that, but it wasn't until the good people on both sides speech
Yeah.
that I started to wake up because
Mhm.
I saw that. I saw that live. I watched it and then I replayed it because there wasn't anything I heard except I'm the greatest. Everybody loves me. That bloviating that he does. I didn't hear anything out of the way as far as that goes. And I was just like, okay, maybe it's a one off kind of situation, whatever. Go to work, come home, turn on the news, and they're talking about how it was racist because he said neo Nazis and white supremacists were fine people. And I'm like, no, I watched that in real time. No,
Yeah.
he said literally, what was it, a minute and 43 seconds later? And I'm not talking about the neo Nazis and white supremacists because they should be condemned totally. And I was just like, there wasn't even when I was listening to it, and I hate the man on a personal level. I hate him. He's an asshole. You
Hmm.
know, he's like me.
Yeah.
He's an asshole. We don't attract each other. you
Yeah.
know, but I was listening to that, and even while that was going on, there was no way I could have, in context in any way, put two and two together for him to say neo Nazis and white supremacists because they came marching out with tiki torches. Like, how did you put that together? Why did you put that together? And ever since then, I just started paying attention more and more. And I was like, how did it get this bad? Has it always been this bad? And lo and behold, yes. Well, not this bad, but
Well, well, I'll be fair. It's always been bad, but like you said, because there wasn't social media, there wasn't all these things that bring all this stuff to the surface, and a lot of independent journalists that are out there doing a lot of investigative work, and conservative media. Um, that a lot of these things just never came, they never bubbled up to the surface. Like I said, I worked as a federal contractor for 20 years in multiple capacities. It wasn't just working in one agency. And I can tell you, DC has been a swamp forever. And so that's my thing is, can you go to Washington and not be corrupted by the system? I don't expect you to be perfect. But can you at least, I mean, talk about strong women, 100% across the board, don't agree with their politics, but Nancy Pelosi gets things done. And
yeah.
she is a hammer, and
AOC's got 10%, the highest rating, but 10% of the Democratic Party says that she represents their core values.
yeah,
And that's the highest one. Then you got Kamala Harris and Jasmine Crockett's like 4%, and Jamie Raskin's like 1%. Like, there's nothing left of the Democrat Party. There's nobody.
because the Tulsi Gabbards came over to the other side.
I mean, y'all threw them out. Y'all said, no, we're not going to let you actually go in front of the people and lead this country, even though y'all would have been great.
Yeah.
You got JFK or RFK. You got, God forbid, Donald fucking Trump. Yes, I'll say it. He's a damn good president. You
Hmm.
know, you got, let's see, Tulsi Gabbard was there. You got every single one of these pundits. Joe Rogan was voting for fucking Bernie Sanders not that long ago.
Yeah.
You know, Tim Pool was voting for Bernie Sanders not that long ago. How the fuck did you lose these guys? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. You can bleep that. But how did you lose these people though? It's mind blowing to me because all you had to do was just continue to do whatever you wanted in a slow motion. And instead you just go black people, trans people, everybody else but white. Immigrants are awesome except white South African farmers because they're white. Oh,
Hmm.
by the way, you remember when they said who's going to pick your crops?
Yeah. Those South
Apparently, we
African
found out
farmers.
it's the white South African farmers. Us.
Yeah.
To see,
But
it's
there's not
things like
enough of
that.
them. There's not enough of them.
59 ain't enough. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's things like that. It gets me. And I'm just like, I look at the Democrat Party now and I was just like, what happened? The
Hmm.
real leadership is gone within your party. There is nothing left because you kicked him to the curb for not going crazy enough,
Hmm.
you know? And I'm just like, you know what? I don't know what this is anymore. I'm just going to step away from all of this. And then I started talking to other people. The conservatives listened to what they had to say, started picking up an independent media. And I was like, no, I'm not even hearing anybody talk about what is this? And then I was just like, oh, I get it. Then I got involved with my other little news group, aggregate group kind of thing going on. Started the podcast, and here I am. So, but yeah, as far as leadership, it's like we were saying before, before we started this. For me, I love Tulsi Gabbard. Been watching her for a minute, and I'm going to say it. If she runs in 2028, she's got my vote.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, she's got. It would be great. It'd be a great kick in the nuts to America for the Republican Party to elect the first woman president.
Yes.
It'd be the biggest kick in the nuts.
Hmm.
But I mean, I've watched that woman, and I've watched her career as soon as I started to wake up. I watched her career in politics, and when she nuked Kamala Harris, I was 100% behind her. And then the fallout after, I was like, y'all are calling her a Russian agent. She is a lieutenant colonel in the military. She'd be in Fort Leavenworth if that were the truth.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, I'm done with y'all.
Hmm.
And listening to her now, and she still has that look. She has that poison grace. When the cameras are on, she looks wonderful.
Hmm.
But there's that look in her eyes that when those cameras are off,
Hmm.
she's gonna crush you in a vice.
Yeah.
And I'm just like that. I would lead in. I'd lead follow that into battle any day.
Hmm.
That kind of look because it's more like that's that do or die killer instinct, and it's rare to find in women that aren't crazy.
Yeah.
But Tulsi works with it. She does it, and it's. I would vote for her for president because you may not like some of her progressive viewpoints on it, but she's more what you guys want than you realize.
But she's authentic.
That's what really does it to me. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
And
what gets me.
she is one person who I really believe hasn't yet been, and I pray that she doesn't get corrupted by the swamp too much. She's been in the swamp for a while because, she's served as Hawaii's representative for a while. But yeah,
Yeah, she
she
was
just,
vice chair of the DNC.
yeah, and if that didn't corrupt you, I don't know I mean, what more could you ask? And it's interesting because this whole women conversation, it seems to me that, and I'm a woman, so I can say this, ha ha ha. Women either seem to be strong and very level-headed and like, okay, determined, grit, all that. Or they're off in left field, just so emotional, and every decision they make and everything is just driven by emotion. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
what is wrong with you? I mean, I am not one of those super, super strong women. I could not endure the swamp. I'm not a leader. I'll never go to the swamp. I never, that's not me. I don't have what it takes to do that, I will admit. But I hope I'm not on this other side all crazy and, emotion driven and, every decision I make is based off of what, my party tells me to do. And it's funny because they say that about MAGA, but I'm like, and I'm sure there are people in MAGA that are that way. But the people I've known, no, no, no. I mean, like just this last week, generally people I know in MAGA, Cash Patel loved him. Dan Bongino loved him. The interview they came out with this week, they're like, we don't love you anymore. You
Hey,
know?
everybody's up in arms about that, and I do have to say this: there's still a lot of that is still yet to be released. A lot of that is still yet to be said. So the official position of the FBI would have to be what's documented. And yes, he did kill himself until it comes out. Because if you leak that shit, you're leaking classified information at that point.
Yeah.
Because you still haven't brought it out to the public. It's still there for the sensitive classified information. And what they say with the little signal gate thing, oh, this is bad because he said these things.
Hmm. Yeah.
Come on.
It wasn't classified. But you're right. But then they always have this out. They could always just say, what is it? This
Yeah.
is currently under investigation, or, that's their big
It's been
out.
played out. Nobody would believe that either.
Right. And so, but that's what I'm saying is MAGA conservative media, believe me, they are all over Cash Patel and Dan Bongino, and I think that's fair. I'm not saying,
Yes,
I'm not saying I've abandoned them and I don't want anything to do with them anymore, but I do think we tend to try to hold our side accountable a lot more than they do. And not to say, that we
it's not
don't
about that though.
sometimes, you know.
It's not about that with them though.
Yeah.
It's just about holding power. It's just about power over you. They rule you. They don't represent you. They rule you.
Yes.
You elect them to literally lash your back and put you under their foot.
Yes. And
It's
that's
not what
not
they want.
leadership. That is not
No,
leadership. That
no,
is,
not at all.
yeah. And
But
so I'll take
it's just
our
like,
not so perfect leaders over these, well, I hate to say it because we overuse the word authoritarian, dictators, racist, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't have a better word. Sorry.
call a spade a spade. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you had like AOC and Jerry Nadler in the middle of New York City. Everybody's screaming, "Close the border," and they're saying, "No, we're going to give them your money. We're going to give them your land. We're going to give them your jobs. We're going to make it a protected class so we can't get rid of them, and you're going to vote for us."
Yeah. So
And
we
I'm
can
just like,
continue to do it.
how can you be that disconnected to sit there and have a city yelling in your face to close the border, and you're just like, "We're giving them everything."
Yeah.
And then you got her people the voting for Jasmine Crockett and Trump because they both represent change. Change into what? The diametric opposites. What
Yeah.
do you want to change about the system? You want the illegals to have everything and then get out? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's New York for you though.
Well, it's not just New York. Unfortunately, it's all over the country. It's even in Texas.
Oh yeah.
You'd think
I mean
Texas
that's
would
where
be,
Jasmine Crockett comes from.
yeah. And there's plenty of them down there in Texas. I mean, sorry, John Cornyn, you know, they all spew the right words, but they don't stand up and they don't, and that's would be my, I don't have the answer. I wish I did. How do we make sure, and I guess it goes back to accountability, just like Cash Patel and Dan Bongino. I think that whatever they said was politically incorrect on our side. I can tell you that. There's a lot of things they could have said, I think, that would have gone over better.
Right.
But we still need to hold our people accountable. You know, Trump, love him or hate him, we still need to hold him accountable. We still need
Mhm.
to make sure that he is representing us the way we want. And sometimes that's hard. And that's where I think this is my big crux on things. When I choose to engage on Facebook and other places, which I rarely ever do, because it just gets too contentious and turns into a whatever. But
Oh, I'm
is
mean. I'm
yeah,
mean online.
yeah. But it's like I'll argue your side of the argument and I'll argue my side of the argument. And then I'll say, hey, guess what? Who should be the leaders in our country? It's
Those
called
that fall in the middle.
we the people. We
Right.
should be the leaders. They're our servants. We sent them to Washington or wherever, your state capitals, your
Now you're
cities.
just flipping the roles.
Yeah.
There are whipping boys. All
Yeah.
right. No, yeah, I get what you're saying though. It's supposed to be designed that way. Yeah, they're supposed to represent us. They're supposed to do as we say. And but there are very few that do. Well, I will say this: as far as Texas goes, you got Chip Roy out there. Now, Chip Roy
Oh
does.
yeah.
He will take the slings and arrows. Let's
Yes.
not forget, it was him who stood up on the floor for an
Yes.
hour saying, "Where are your balls, Republicans?"
Hmm.
So he was bravo. You're
Yeah.
right.
The
And yet
Freedom
he was
Caucus.
excoriated for it.
Yeah. Well, being here in Virginia, dang, what was his name? He got voted out this time. He was in the House, and they put in some swamp creature that actually Donald Trump supported, which I was very disappointed. And Donald Trump supported him because this guy was in the Freedom Caucus and he voted against something that Trump wanted. and it made oh, he didn't endorse Trump. That was his cardinal sin. What was his name?
Oh God, that I don't remember who that was. I'm trying to figure it out right now.
I can see his face. I've written him letters.
Da- da-
I
da- da-
can't
da.
remember his name right now, but yeah, I really, really disappointed. And the other one, let's go way back. Let's go back to Eric Cantor when Eric Cantor out of Virginia was the House minority leader.
Bob
Hmm?
Bob Good.
Yes, Bob Good.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but whatever his name, Eric Cantor, when he got voted out by Dave Bratt from Liberty University, he didn't last very long in Washington at all either. And why didn't he last very long? I can tell you why he didn't last very long, because he didn't toe, the party line. He wasn't part of the swamp.
Yeah. Virginia's bad. I
I
mean,
know.
you remember the Loudoun County incident?
Oh, how dare I not forget the Loudoun County incident.
Okay, well, I can send you some information that'll make you even more enraged.
Oh,
Yeah. From the same Loudoun County. It's the same school district, not the same school. But in Loudoun County, three boys had a girl who identified as a boy was in the boys' locker room and she was recording three boys. Well, they expressed concern saying, "Hey, this girl's recording in our bathroom." And because they said this girl and not this boy, they're facing sexual harassment charges.
oh.
So
See,
it's now sexual harassment in Loudoun County to express concern about a girl recording you in the locker room.
I know. Loudoun County is a mess. I will admit that. And Fairfax
Ugh.
County is. I just saw something today about Fairfax County, and that's where I used to live, was in Fairfax County. Um, is DEI, over the whole DEI, they're getting sued over DEI,
Right.
which is a good thing. But they are every bit as bad as Loudoun County. It's just that for some reason Loudoun County has a tendency to get more publicity. I'm not sure why that is. But this is where it comes back to me, we need to step up and be the leaders. We don't need to run for office and go try to drain the swamp and all that kind of stuff. But we need to hold our leaders accountable. That's the leadership aspect that we, I think, as people should take upon ourselves. That's the mantle we should take.
Yes. Yes. And even bring up a point, it's you want to make a change in our federal system, you have to make a change in your home first.
Yes.
You really do, because these are where these people come from. When they get up to that point, they're already gone through your system where you don't care. Just because there's a D or a R behind their name, they're going to vote for you. And then they get to that level. And then that's where the corruption really, really, spreads very, very quickly. But it all starts at home. Case in point, here in my county, we had our sheriff who was embezzling funds to go vote at a horse track,
Hmm.
county funds to go
Yeah,
vote at a horse track.
that
And
doesn't.
he literally said, "You'll never catch me.
Mhm.
You can indict a ham sandwich." He's sitting in prison. We voted him in, you know? We
Good.
got to own up to that and make sure we don't do that again. Are we going to? No. 30,000 people, there ain't no way you can reach even half of that
Yeah.
unless they know you. You're out there talking to them, you're out there doing these things, but then again, if you're doing that, why not run for some kind of local office?
And I agree with that. I agree people can, that's not my cup of tea, but and I will go out of my way to support. I mean, I'm very fortunate. His name's Nick Freitas. He's my House representative down in Richmond, and he
I
is
love Nick.
awesome. Oh,
I
you know
love
him.
Nick.
All
Yo,
right.
he's just that smart ass that I am, and it's awesome.
I know.
He's just got more of a filtered mouth than me, you know?
Yeah.
But I just love it. I see him on YouTube and those little shorts and the TikTok things that he
Yeah.
does and everything. And I'm just like, I mean, there's no way you can't say this is common sense, you know?
Yeah.
Why is that so hard to do in America anymore? Like the things he shows, it is just great. And I love him. I love him. I love to see what he's done to that state. And hopefully he can get it on a better track.
I think he will, but I know he's aspiring to higher office, and I know he's told me Mike Lee is his he wants Mike Lee to be his mentor, which he is in some sense, which I have tremendous respect for Mike Lee. He's another person I think that, is a good leader. But I think going back to Jim Jordan a little bit, we need to do more than just send strongly worded letters to our
Yes.
representatives.
Yes.
That's step one. That's step one. But if that's all you do, it's not going to matter because they get so many strongly worded letters. I think they all end up in the, round file at the door. And
The biggest thing that they're going to be scared of is being primaried. Being in
yes.
a race against them, and especially if you are a strong candidate individual, if you can go out there and you're just going to, whether you want to play dirty, whether you want to play clean
Mhm.
above the board, you definitely have to play to your base with that. But any strong candidate, you would literally have 90% of Congress scared at this point,
Mhm.
left, right, and center.
Yes. That is, yeah, getting primaried is their number one thing. And on that note, this is another place you can send a strongly worded letter, Charlie Kirk. It's freedom at charliekirk.com. Um, and he does, he reads everything you send him. If you let him know, hey, Tom Tillis, we're not happy with what you did to Ed Martin, so we want Tom Tillis out of there. If he gets enough, emails from people saying we want Tom Tillis out of there, believe me, Tom Tillis is
They'll
out of
start paying attention.
there.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's good. They say that's a good leadership kind of thing because he's looking at his face. He's looking at the people that actually care enough to at least send him information, and
mhm,
he's looking into it and actually trying to do something. That's leadership.
yes,
And you don't even have to know him. You never have to meet him before, but just because you said something to him at some point in time, something happened.
mhm,
That is leadership.
yes,
That's what we need. And
yes.
on a federal level, the only leadership I actually see is Trump and the women in the Republican Party right now. And that's it.
Well, if we jump over to the Senate for a minute, like
Other than
Marsha,
I will go ahead and say screw Pam Bondi. Okay. All
yeah,
you had to say was this was already stuff that was leaked, but it does confirm that that was not a right wing conspiracy theory. Give me a moment. They may be shredding the stuff right now, and
yeah,
everybody would have been fine.
yeah,
But she just played it up like it was something major. You rolled out social media stars for it, and it was the same thing we've had for a year.
yeah,
More redacted.
yeah. I was a
Yeah, no.
little suspicious of her, not majorly suspicious. I mean, I personally would have preferred Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, I would have too, but he tucked tail and ran. But when all that came out about the underage people, and I was just like, okay, so you're not gonna stick there and fight that?
I know. And
Did you do this?
well, I have mixed feelings about how that all played out. I've heard many stories from many credible people, and I don't know, but I do think Trump will always have a place for him. And I know Trump's, I think he's going to be working with for Ed Martin in
Right.
some capacity. So I'm okay there. But from a moral perspective, like I said, the only thing I like about Matt Gaetz is he's a fighter and he's willing to stand up. But I do like Mike Lee. I definitely do. But Marsha Blackburn, if we're on women in the Senate, I like Marsha Blackburn. Um,
Tennessee.
yeah, Tennessee. She's disappointed me a few times, but I can live with disappointment sometimes. And and I do like Ted Cruz. I kind of go back and forth. And Josh Hawley, I put Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz in the same bucket. They do a lot of good things, but there's other things that I kind of shake my head and go, I'm not,
Yeah,
you know.
I see. I like Josh Hawley. I really do, but I
Mhm.
see him more effective in committee hearings than
Yeah,
in bills and
yeah,
votes on the floor, things like that. He's more effective at talking than he is actually voting the way the people should be, the
exactly.
way the majority of us want.
Right. And sponsoring legislation, I think that's where I think Mike Lee is pretty silent about it, but Mike Lee actually sponsors quite a bit of legislation. Ted Cruz sponsors legislation. And he's willing to fight for it if it's his, which,
Right.
but when there's 535 of these people serving in Congress, and between the two of us, what we've come up with 10, maybe? That's kind of
Yeah, that's bad. That's incredibly bad. That is less than 10%. Yeah. That is like 0.02%.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. So back to it's up to us. We have to
Yeah.
quit voting people into office and expecting them to solve our problems.
Well, I mean, that's what they're there for. We just have to hold them to account when they're not doing it. Do not put them back in again just because of a letter on their name. I mean, look, we had a podcast presidency. Okay, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
The podcasts are what put Trump back in.
Oh yeah.
You know, the Joe Rogan one, everything that he did, he was going out there, with Aiden Ross and all that. They're the ones that helped him get in, especially with the younger crowd of people, the more reserved kind of Joe Rogan crowd. You
Mm-hmm.
sat there and listened for 3 hours, and half of that they were talking about MMA.
I know.
You know, it humanized him on a
Yeah.
bigger level than anybody would have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to now walk into, I don't know, maybe the next term could be a social media presidency. Because look, AOC is going to run. That's the
Oh,
strongest person they have.
yeah.
Bernie Sanders ain't going to be alive for that.
No.
Who's after that? What do you got? You
Yeah.
got Jasmine Crockett. Kamala Harris ain't going to do it again.
No.
You got Jasmine Crockett, the next on the list. What, Jamie Raskin? Come on.
Yeah.
What do you
Well,
got?
and I don't count these as, credible, but JB Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, you know,
Newsom would be easily destroyable.
him and
Easily
Pritzker.
destroyable.
Yeah, so him and Pritzker, because their track record isn't that great. Josh Shapiro, I think, would be a formidable force if he chose to run. Um, but
Only because he would have that Jewish shield, though.
well,
Let's
yeah.
be honest.
Well, let's to be fair, because he is Jewish, he would have the whole, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib crowd against him. And that's a big group. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't consider him to be a big contender, but AOC's got a big mouth and a big platform. So
And Jasmine Crockett the same.
yeah, but Jasmine Crockett is just an idiot. When AOC
They
first
love
came,
her though.
well, I know only a few people do, honestly. But when AOC first came onto the scene, she was a Jasmine Crockett. She just said the stupidest stuff. And then over
Yes.
time, she's learned to temper it a little bit, because she's aspired to higher things. I think Jasmine Crockett's got to learn to temper her mouth a little bit before she'll go anywhere.
But that's what she wants, though. That's what she wants. She wants to create that stink. She wants everybody to be like, oh, okay, she's finally had enough. She's fighting for me, kind of thing. It's all fake. You listen to these committee hearings, the woman is never on point with anything she says.
I
Any
know.
point she raises up, it's always orange man bad. It used to be Asperger's man bad for a
Yeah,
long time, or
yeah,
you're racist because you won't give black people everything. That's the only thing she has in her bag.
I know. And that's why she's not going anywhere. But AOC was the same way when she first came onto the scene, and now she learned to play the game. Nancy Pelosi, I believe, is the one that put AOC in her place. And
Yes.
you know,
After that, that was actually after the little January 6th comment on the
yeah.
House floor. You had that viral moment, and then she started crying. Yeah,
Hmm.
she was done at that point. She played ball.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting, but like I said, I think coming circle back to the same thing. We as people need, and because podcasts, I like podcasts because it gives these politicians an opportunity to actually engage with people on a deeper level, and we don't just hear their talking points. And, you know, I'm sick of talking points. I could care less about talking points. And I wish people, I know that the legal side of things isn't what interests people a lot, but you and I both like Robert Gouveia. But I like the fact that he goes through the documents. He's very entertaining.
Yes.
But he goes through and it's like, okay, now it's easier for me to make an informed decision about whether this court case is really, because right now that's where the battle's being fought. It's not being fought at the ballot box, it's being fought, in the courts.
Right.
And so to be informed and make a good decision about these things, it's helpful to actually go through the documents.
Right. He's actually the one that, I asked him one time, I was just like, hey, how are you finding these things? And he's just like, hey, look, it's this. You got to know this. You got to know this or this. And you can easily find that here. And ever since then, I've been able to pull this up on my own and go through it all. And I'm just like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
like it was during the Proud Boys trial thing, the Dominic Bozzola's motion for mistrial because there were 50 plus informants in the crowd that were instigating. He
yeah.
was the one that actually showed me how to find it. And I was like, all right, cool. You know, it's people like that. If you want to talk about leadership, there you go. He'd be entertaining leadership, you
Yeah.
know, maybe not as far as federal or government related, but I mean, he would
Well,
definitely be the type to kind of lead you in an area
in his area of
more close
expertise,
to the
yeah,
yeah, more close to the actual truth instead of what you actually hear in the news.
yeah, in his area of expertise, he is leading the way because, like I said, right now it's these court cases that are driving the day, and
Right.
being informed is really, really important and understanding because there's a couple people I engaged with on Facebook and they'll post on Facebook some New York Times article or something that just totally misrepresents the whole thing. And I
Right.
guess my first real experience with this, and I am so grateful, and this is what I posted on his Facebook one day because he was posting something about January 6th. I said, I want you to know I voted for Trump if for no other reason. I got tired of hiding because I was down
Yeah.
in DC on January 6th. And for 4 years, I was waiting for the FBI SWAT team to come to my door, you know? And I didn't even go near the Capitol. But I do
Yep.
know that there were a lot of people who didn't go near the Capitol who were also swept up in all of it. And
Yeah.
so January 6th is like my big thing because I was obviously, it affected me personally. And I said for the first time in 4 years, I feel like I can speak openly. I feel like I can tell people what really happened that day.
Right.
I mean, from the moment it was funny because I left way before. Well, let's put it this way. As I was walking toward the parking lot, which was a long, long, long ways away, I my uncle and I had gotten not lost, but we wanted the shortest route back to our car. So we stopped this cop and said, "Hey, can you give us directions?" And literally right about the time we said that, he over his radio was like, "Oh, the Capitol's been breached," and off he went. And
Right.
um yeah. So we kind of hung around and watched from afar a little bit. And it wouldn't have mattered if we had our cell phones on because they had jammed all the cell towers anyway and you couldn't communicate.
Hmm.
But we didn't have cell service. So as soon as I got within cell service, my phone's like ringing off the hook. My husband's like, "Are you okay? What's happening? I'm watching what's happening. This is terrible. Are you safe? Are you okay?" I'm like, "What?" And I was so mad from day one. I was so mad. I'm like, you guys have blown this thing so out of proportion. Now,
Right.
yes, were there people who did bad things? Yes. But out of the 14, 1,500 that you arrested, I'd say maybe well, we're down to that 0.2%.
Right. Again. And as far as that goes, there is a punishment that has to be done, but they already had their punishment.
Oh,
You're,
yeah.
you're talking about you're talking about simple assault in most cases.
If
In
that,
some others, maybe
the
you could go for a little
trespassing,
bit worse, right?
trespassing.
Or that woman, that 70-year-old woman that had cancer that was nowhere near the
Yeah,
Capitol, but she was
yeah,
in DC, close
yeah,
by. Yeah,
yeah.
that kind of thing. You know, it's kind of things like that. But with everything that I've seen come out of that, which we will have a lot of J6 information dropping sometime, hopefully very soon.
Might be like the Epstein or the
If it's
JFK
just
files.
what's in these documents here, I'm just gonna be like, I'm done with a lot of you. Dump it now. Dump
Yeah,
it now or get out because we're not playing this game. We're not
yeah,
going to do this anymore. But then again, it's also going to prove a lot of what the right has been saying. And
yeah.
I think it's actually going to lean more along the lines of this was set up. I mean, you had Nancy Pelosi waiting
Mhm.
71 minutes to give Stephen Son the okay to move the guard in because she was calling everybody, where are you at? Are you safe? Why was her daughter there recording on the a
Yeah,
historic day that has happened so many times. Why would this be an historic day? Why? Because Trump lost? Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, no, there was some more to that. Not to mention that, the Yogananda Pittman was sitting in the command center for the U.S. Capitol Police, and she gave no command
Hmm.
to clear out the house. She gave no command to anybody. They
Hmm.
just did it. And
Yeah.
now Yogananda Pittman is sitting as the chief of the University of Berkeley in California, the chief of police of that. The district right next to Nancy Pelosi, she's getting paid more money than the university ever paid
Mm.
their Capitol Police or their chief of police. She's getting all these benefits. Nobody knew she existed until that lieutenant came out and said, "My leadership said nothing, so I did it anyway."
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how do y'all not say anything like that? You got so many videos of them saying they set us up and things like that, and you would have to actively ignore this information at this point
Hmm.
in time where we've been. You would have to actively ignore that information just because you want it to be bad.
Yes.
Okay, cool. It was bad. Everybody agrees. It's not a good sign for our country at all, other than the fact that the people are tired of being abused, you know? And
Well, I can tell you, I can promise you, because this is something I've studied in depth, is the overwhelming majority of the people who engaged in any kind of violence, it's number one, because they probably, more than likely, there was a few, like Ray Epps, but other than him, that actually were fighting back because they were, the police were actually trying to fight them back. And
right,
like Roseanne Boylan, you watch the people that got the harshest sentences and the harshest are the ones who were trying to pull the cops, Lila Morris trying to pull her off of Roseanne Boylan while she's beating her with her baton and she's unconscious. And
yeah,
yeah, and guess what? The people that pulled Lila Morris off, the cop, they got the harshest sentence, one of the harshest sentences.
hmm,
I'm sorry, they did the right thing. If you see a cop beating somebody who's already unconscious with their baton, you need to pull that cop off. And there's video of
yes,
that. There's plenty of video of it. And I'm sorry, that stupid bird guy that shot, I'm so glad that they finally
Michael
settled with
Bird.
Ashley Babbitt. I'm I'm like, I'm sorry, you do not shoot an unarmed person. You don't.
No, there was no reason for that, especially, oh, she was just trying to get through that. I want to call BS on that anyway, because if you watch that,
Yeah,
unless she's planning to face plant on the side,
yeah,
who raises up to go through a window who fully extended, their arms fully extended to support themselves? Who does that?
yeah,
She is fully extended. Her back is straight. You're not going to get through unless you decide to face plant.
yeah.
There was no reason for him to do it, but he did it anyway.
I know. I, yeah, I think he was looking for a reason. So many of those things. And, Jacob Chansley, I always found that interesting when he tells his story. They have video of them escorting him through the Capitol building, like
Yes.
it was a tour guide, you know?
Yes.
And I'm like, and people, they just suck this up and they just believe that all these terrible things happen. And it's funny because when I first got back home, my husband was like, he would not believe me. I'm like, this isn't what they're saying. This isn't what they're saying. I was, yes, it is. I was watching the videos. I saw all those people, blah, 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 blah. And it took about 6 months and he was like, oh, I guess what they're saying isn't exactly true. And
As soon as I started to catch wind that the Capitol was breached on all sides, but the only violence that ever happened was on the west side.
yeah,
Huh.
hmm, go figure
Yeah,
that.
that kind of blows everything out there. Because that's where all the video footage you see comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. There's just so many, I watched Laura Logan and she put together a whole series and I watched Tucker Carlson's, watched him and all of the videos they put together. And even still, out of the 40,000 hours that they supposedly turned over, once we're back to this, less than 2% of the video footage has actually been used to make a case.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Yes.
you know, I get tired of people, and that's why I think these long form, podcasts and various things allow people to explore these in a little more depth, and and I do. I'm sorry, but the reason I was down in DC was not because I was upset about Trump losing. I was upset about the election, all of the tremendous amount of anomalies, I can't say that word, um, in the election, And I can
Hmm.
guarantee you, if Trump would have won, I mean, even this one where Trump won and Kamala Harris lost, there's still some anomalies, and I want to see those investigated. I do.
Yes. Yes. There's a big one that I covered on our channel here. The guy's name is Craig Calloway. He
Oh,
helped get Van Drew elected in 2022. And then he was arrested because he was wrapped up in a voter fraud ring. What he would do is he would hire people to go to places and gather empty ballots with nothing but a signature, and
hmm.
they would bring them back to him. Him and his team would fill them out themselves and pay others to do ballot box stuffing, which, hey, kind of gives credence to 2000 Mules. Not going to lie.
Yeah.
But throughout everything you can find, as far as like even in news articles and everything, throughout everything you can find about Craig Calloway from
Hmm.
Atlantic City,
Hmm.
it never mentions 2020. The
Yeah.
only thing in his case that mentions 2020 is he said he was involved with 2020 as well.
Yeah.
They even asked him personally, were you involved in any voter fraud scheme and in 2020? And he said, in longer words than that, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
But you won't find it in any reporting.
No. And the frustrating part to me is, I mean, if I could go through, I have a whole document of all of the different people who did investigations. And the reason that I was there on January 6th, because if you think about between November 4th, whenever, the election was, and January 6th, I literally sat and watched all of those hearings where Jenna Ellis, who was, somewhat disappointing, she was a disappointing female, um, and Rudy Giuliani, who's, had some
He's
interesting,
a disappointing male.
yeah, he's a disappointing male. But at least at that point in time, they went around to all of these different state legislatures and
Right.
testified and presented evidence in all of those swing states. And I sat and watched it over and over and over again. And I was like, so even with just that little bit of information, and that's all I had prior to January 6th, I was like, this is insane. And then it, just
Right.
like January 6th, it also, the election, stolen election, made me dig into that deeper. And I was
Oh,
like,
there's a lot out there.
yeah, there's a
There's a
ton.
lot. There's one in Michigan where they broke up a voter fraud ring who had like what was it 150,000 illegal registrations,
Yeah.
15,000 ballots
Hmm.
that were illegal, and proof that some of them had actually gone through the system with a cache of weapons.
Hmm.
Why would you need that? And then all of a sudden they catch on to it, and everybody's just like, "Oh well, they just vanished. Oh
Yeah.
well, we stopped one. What?
Yeah. Aren't you glad we
You
stopped
know,
it?
you got the one in Georgia there.
Mhm.
They had that case, and then all the lawyers were the defense lawyers were all up in arms about it, and then all of a sudden they backed out of the case, and 1.2 million votes went missing.
Yeah, Garland Favorino. He did his job for quite some time and then it just disappeared.
Right? There's a lot to it, and it's probably been going on forever. I'm sorry, I look at every presidency that we've had since
Hmm.
going back to World War II, and every single one of them are questionable. Like you got what was it, Bush's second term? He won just because he sued one county in one state, and he won the presidency for that. Come on,
Okay, so I agree. If you go, there was a documentary made in 2000, 2020. Yeah, not 2020, sorry, 2000. It's called Democracy Hacked. You have to get it
right?
on DVD nowadays. I don't know. I'm sure you can probably stream it somewhere nowadays. But that was the first time I got introduced to voter fraud, and they showed how easy it was to, you know, hack the machines basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, um, so it's been going on.
Oh yeah, they knew about it even beforehand. That's why they pushed so hard for Dominion at that point in time. You got Carrie Lake's
Oh,
trial.
I
You
know.
remember that one?
Oh,
The
yeah.
signature verification where she actually brought proof that they had closed up the machines, filled out all the paperwork, sealed them up, then unsealed them, updated the machines, and then sealed them back up without recording any of that in the record.
And isn't it amazing that what, 60% of the precincts went down?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that shouldn't affect the outcome at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And
No,
put your
you
ballot
you put
behind
yours
door number three.
right. Put it there. Put it. That. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. No, I'm sorry.
I
I
know.
mean, even the signature verification, she was sitting there saying, look, they did not do it correctly. The judge is like, I'm just going to dismiss this.
Yeah,
Arizona Supreme Court says, hey, no, there's actually merit to this. You must take this back. And just because he got butthurt because he was embarrassed about it, he literally told her, if you want to win this case, you must prove not a single verification was done anywhere. And that was never her claim. Her
I know.
claim was that it wasn't done right because two-thirds of it was at the level one level. Two-thirds of them were literally 3 to 5 seconds. You can't look at a signature and tell that's the right signature. And some of them were obvious. Even if you looked at the screen, there's no way you could say, yeah, that's the right one,
I know.
you know? So I mean that was just sickening to go through all that. And he's just like, well, yep, they did signature verification, so you lose.
Well, it's interesting because, we're starting to see this. And we find, thanks again to Robert Gouveia. Shout out to him. But a lot of these judges, it's clear that part of the reason they're ruling the way they are is because they have a financial interest in a lot of these NGOs and things like that, or their wife does, or, there's somebody that does. And I mean, significant. If you go back to Carrie Lake, and I'm like, what? Because I sat and watched the whole hearing, they streamed it. I watched it while I was doing other work. And um, I was like, why is this judge? What is up with this judge? Well, come to find out, what happens a lot in Arizona and New Mexico and California, especially Southern California, is the cartels, and they're the ones that really, they are the main reason that Carrie Lake is not in, and she pushed hard on that issue, is because they go in and they buy up property, and then they it's a money laundering scheme, and it goes through several different steps, so I don't know exactly, step by step how it happens, but they buy property for these judges, and that's how they buy off these judges. They can't give them cash directly, that'd be too obvious, and they
Right.
can't give them property directly, so because that would be too obvious, so they launder it, but it's the cartels doing all of that down there. And
Oh
what's her
yeah.
name, Katie Hobbs, is she's another Joe Biden, but instead of being owned by the swamp in Washington, she's owned by the cartels.
That is true. And if you actually look back and there was I think it came from the Gateway Pundit, if I'm not mistaken. There was an article about how Carrie Lake was they tried to bribe Carrie Lake to get out
Yeah.
of the Senate
Yep.
race.
Nope.
If you listen back to that, the dude actually says in there, by the way, I hear the cartels are working in all 50 states. Fast forward 6 months, and then you start getting Trinidad Aragua popping up everywhere. And I was like, um,
Uh, yeah.
and then all of a sudden it stopped reporting because last time I heard anything about it, they were in 17 states,
Yep. Yeah.
including my state. And I'm just like,
Yeah. Well,
y'all really don't want to pull that trigger yet. All right.
yeah.
You may get
Well,
away with it in Nashville because Nashville is kind of, don't go any further.
yeah. Well, we all know where MS-13 is based out of, my lovely state of Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
dude got arrested 30 minutes outside of DC.
yeah. Well, no, MS-13 has been around. I mean, like I
Oh,
said, I
yeah,
lived,
they have been. But one of the MS-13 leaders, he was
yeah.
arrested 30 minutes outside of DC in his house. He was living 30 minutes outside of DC.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That's Fairfax County. That's their home base. And that's where I lived. I lived in Fairfax County. And I can tell you in 2010, 2011, MS-13 was a major presence in Fairfax County. So
Hmm.
yeah, it hasn't just been recently. They've been around quite a while. Tren de Aragua is kind of new. MS-13 is not new. And
Oh, no.
they they do the bidding of the cartels. The Sinaloa cartel owns a lot of them in one way or
And they
another.
are ruthless.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, well, I think we solved all the world's problems today.
Hopefully.
Yeah. If not, we can have another conversation and see what other problems we can solve. But I
Hey,
think,
I'm down for it. I love this kind of thing. The more people talk to each other in an open and honest way like this, instead of the screaming and yelling, which I'm good at,
yeah,
I will.
hey,
I'll
there's a
have
time and a
fun with it,
place. There's a time and
right?
a place.
I'm good for a little scrap once in a while, but I can still have these conversations, in a respectful way
Yeah,
and things like. And this is what we need. This is the kind of thing because I'm not I'm not happy with the way this country has has become,
no,
simply because everything that I was taught that this country is and needs was back in the well, I'm sorry, back in the 90s. And, I want to go back to that because nobody cared about anything. We were all just living our lives happy and carefree. And maybe that's where, maybe that's where it all went wrong. But
no, it went
I'd
wrong.
rather have that.
Honestly, um, and this is a conversation for another day. So I'll let you do a little homework on this one and we can have a conversation another day. Have you ever heard of the
Okay.
Council on Foreign Relations?
Yes.
Okay. Council on Foreign Relations, the not Epstein Island. What's what's the Federal Reserve?
Uh, Davos? No,
No,
no, no, no, no.
when
That
it
was the
first
World Health
started in like
Organization.
1913 or whenever around there. It started down there.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that one. And there's three things. I'll email you. But
Okay.
that's where it all started. I wouldn't say it's
Eh,
where it all started. That's where it really started in on steroids.
well, yeah, we did take ourselves off the gold standard about that time too. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I can see
there's
how
a
that
lot.
would be a thing.
Well,
Inflation and when money supplies skyrocketed from that point. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a lot to discuss about World War I and World War II. They weren't,
I think that was just on one ongoing war and everybody just said chill for a minute. All right.
yeah. And then they decided after World War II just to continue on with the Korean War and the Vietnam War and yeah. So, yep.
Well, it was
But,
great actually talking to you. This was fun.
yeah, it was a conversation for another day.
I
We'll just go farther back in history.
don't know how much farther I can go until I don't have the knowledge of that anymore. All right.
It doesn't take much. There's a book out there called The President Makers. It's usually out of print, but it shows every president since Herbert Hoover, if I believe right, or Wilson, one or the other. And they were the first ones. Yep, my beloved Ronald Reagan was part of the Council on Foreign Relations. The only president that has not been a part of the Council on Foreign Relations is Donald J. Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, that's there's a
Yeah,
lot of things that he's been the first to do or not do,
yeah,
and I'm kind of proud of it. I'm not gonna
yeah,
lie. I hate the dude on a personal level, but
yeah.
tip my hat.
Yeah. So, hey, and I'm not saying it's because he's a great person and wouldn't be involved. I think the reason he probably wasn't involved is because he hasn't been involved, in elected politics. He's been involved in politics, but not on an elected basis.
Right.
And I think if he would have been entrenched like the rest of these politicians, he probably would have been right in there with the Council on Foreign Relations. So I'm not going to exempt him from that one.
Right.
But at least he hasn't joined it yet that I know of. So,
Well, it's also the WEF that really concerns me too.
oh yeah,
And
yeah. Well, believe me, Council on Foreign Relations or the WF is just an outgrowth of the Council on Foreign Relations.
oh yeah, yeah,
So
that's the whole thing of during the Davos thing, another some for another time where they were trying to get like 186 sovereign nations to give up
yeah,
their sovereignty rights for the next pandemic. But hey,
hey,
monkeypox was right around the corner, right?
yeah,
Uh,
give us time. Give us time. All right. Well, until next time.
have a good day, everybody.
Thanks for joining me today.
Not a problem.
If you've been enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to leave a 5-star rating to help others discover this valuable content. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue creating engaging episodes for our listeners.